It's tough out here. Tougher than I thought it would be sometimes. It can even get lonely, sometimes quiet. Too quiet, like something's about to happen kind of quiet. It's true what they say about war. Is it worth it? Being a Christian? Walking this walk? Talking this talk? Fighting this fight? You bet it's worth it. It's completely worth it. But look, I've got some advice for you. If you're gonna try and take ground from the devil, you better know he's gonna put up a fight. Friend, write this down. You better be well armed.
Well, good morning again, everybody. Glad you're here. My name is Joel. I am the lead pastor here. Glad you're with us today, especially those of you who are a guest with us. We hope you have found our welcome to be warm and sincere. For those of you joining us online, maybe you're watching later this week from family camp and you're catching up for your life group. Thanks for letting us be part of your journey. We also know that there are some people who check us out online before they ever join us in person. So we're glad you're taking advantage of this. We're honored to be with you on this journey, and we can't wait to meet you face to face. Next week is going to be a big Sunday for us. It's kind of the fall. You know, the fall kind of does that. September-ish. I know the fall doesn't begin until later September. I know that. But I mean, it kind of begins unofficially for us right here in this week, and with Labor Day weekend and camp, family camp, and all the stuff going on and travel. But next week is Grandparents' Day, and next Sunday is Grandparents' Day. And we're so excited to be able to honor the grandparents and grandfriends in our lives. You say, what's a grandfriend? Well, that's someone who kind of takes a surrogate role of a grandparent. I'm so thankful for the grandfriends our kids have here in our fellowship because, you know, our kids' grandparents live like 1,700 miles away. So we're so thankful for those of you who fill in that role. So next week we're going to honor those grandparents, grandfriends among us. And if you got one, bring them. You got a grandparent, grandfriend, bring them. If you are a grandparent, grandfriend, bring the grandkids. And we're just going to celebrate, have some stuff, more information in your bulletin about that also in the focus that comes out this week. If you don't get the focus in your inbox, there's only two reasons for that. Either one, we don't have your email address, or two, it was accidentally marked spam, and you have been getting it, but it's been stacking up in there. We're thrilled that we have this process that goes on throughout the year of our connection process. Starts with 101, then goes to 201 and 301. That whole process is outlined there in your bulletin on the left side at the top. Says make a connection. And part of that process is when people become partners or they become members. And we're so excited for folks that go through that and complete that. And they go through it at kind of different rates. So it's always a couple here, a couple there, a pair here, 3 or 4. And today we're just honored. On the backside of your bulletin says this too. Nisha Barton and Rosalind Johnson finished the process, became partners. The elders approved that just, I think, 2 weeks ago. I don't remember when the elders last met. I just forgot. But if you're excited to partner up with us, October 14th is your next chance. You can sign up on your connection card. And I tell you why I get so excited about this. You know, we're in a culture that doesn't value or doesn't place a high value on committing to something. I mean, we just kind of like to keep our options open. And for a congregation, when people cross that line and they say, you know what, I'm one of the family, that's special. And we don't take that lightly. So we're so thrilled that these two this time have joined. There's already, I think, 3 more in line for the elders to go through the next time we meet with them, which is the end of this month. So we're just so excited to see what God's doing around here. So will you just officially welcome them into our family? You know, we don't often talk about our membership a whole lot or our partnership, and that's not really neither here nor there. But it just kind of seems like sometimes our membership hides in plain sight. You know, there's certain things that the members can do, but like voting and things like that. But we don't talk about it a whole lot. So it just kind of seems to hide in plain sight, and it gets me to thinking that there are times things really can hide in plain sight. Years ago, before Patty and I had children, we had dogs. And we had this one dog I called Mr. Bob. Now, Bob here, he was an old soul. He was over 15 years old. He might have been pushing 20 when we adopted this dog. We got him from a rescue down in the LA area. It was a no-kill shelter, and they rescued Cocker Spaniels. And we were the surrogate, we were like hospice for Mr. Bob. He was mostly blind, deaf, had arthritis in all of his little joints. The only thing he had working for him was he could smell. But he was the happiest little guy for the whole 6 months we had him. And the neat thing about Mr. Bob is he loved my wife, Patty. Just adored her. She would get around him and he would realize it was her and his little nub would go a wag, and he was it was like, whatever, feed me. But her, oh, she was so precious to this old dog, and she would play hide and seek with this dog. Let me tell you, hide and seek with a blind deaf dog is a lot of fun. I highly recommend you try it. Go out and become hospice for an old animal, adopt them, they're great. Old dogs are the best, I'm telling you. And so she'd play hide and seek with this dog. And one particular morning, I remember she was playing hide and seek with Bob, and she hid by leaning up against a wall, and she got real still. That dog came trotting through the room, walked right past her. Okay, no problem. He's a boy dog. Maybe he just didn't see her, didn't notice her. Okay, guys can't find anything, so maybe it extends to dogs. She's standing there, and the dog walks past, looks dead on at her. I mean, I thought but his nub wasn't wagging. He sniffed, and he walked out of the bedroom. Patty calls out to me, "Hey, Joel, I don't think he can see me." Well, he couldn't hear her either. So this whole time, he walked back through. I guess he heard a little bit, walked back through, looked right in her direction, and he kept on walking. I guess it's really true. Things can be hiding in plain sight, well, at least from old, mostly blind and deaf dogs. But, this is the phenomenon that happens to all of us. It's why we can go into a room a dozen times and not find that one thing we're looking for. And yet we'll walk back in on the 13th trip and go, "Did you just put that there?" No, it's always been there. But we were so used to seeing it, it just kind of recedes into the background. We just don't notice it anymore. It's why we can be sent to find something in the kitchen, be told exactly where it is, and we can look in the fridge or look in the drawer, and we can right at it, and someone goes, "Are you blind? It's right there." And when they point at it, now we see it. It's just amazing how our eyes and our brains work with that. And yet it happens to us psychologically and spiritually as well. We have an enemy that has mastered the art of hiding in plain sight. I mean, he hides right in front of us, and we're so used to it that we don't even see him anymore. As a matter of fact, one of his best tricks is actually making us believe he's not even there. One of our enemy, the devil, Satan's greatest tricks is he has convinced Western culture that we're too enlightened for such things like spiritual warfare and the devil. We mock it. Just pay attention next time you're watching a TV show. Things like the devil and Satan and Lucifer and hell, these are like jokes. I mean, Satan's greatest trick, he hides right in front of us saying, "Here I am," and the whole time he's convinced our culture he doesn't exist, and we believe it. And so that spills over into us as Christians because we're part of the culture too, so we kind of diminish it. We feel sometimes kind of silly even talking about it, and yet we have an enemy that he doesn't fight fairly. And he hits below the belt, and he cheats, and he breaks all the rules, and he's been running the same plan for so long that his battle plans are so predictable, and yet he keeps running them because we keep falling for them. We keep getting fooled. Every generation keeps getting fooled, and yet the Bible spends a great deal of time trying to open our eyes and letting us see all of this. Secular humanism does not have an answer for evil. It struggles with trying to figure out why evil is evil. The best that secular humanism can come up with most of the time is that we have evil because of culture. That something in our culture creates evil, but they don't really know why it exists. But yet as people of faith, we know where evil comes from. We know the story. We know why things are evil. We know why they're broken, and we even know the solution. But how many times do we sit back afraid to say something, get in our own struggles and get afraid to really name it for what it is, and the whole time our real enemy just goes traipsing across our culture, wrecking lives all the time, right in front of our faces. I think Satan is so brave, I think some days he doesn't even bother hiding from us. I think he just kind of says, "Hit me with your best shot." Now look, I'm not trying to imply that every bad thing that happens in your life is a direct result of Satan himself. Sometimes your flat tire is just because you didn't rotate your tires and you ran over a nail. Sometimes it's just a bad day. But there are times when it's more. There are times when it is something else. This is what we're talking about in this series, Well Armed. We're talking about not only the reality of spiritual warfare, but the reality that God has already given us all the tools, all the weapons we need to successfully fight the battle. And I am so excited for this series. I've been sitting on this one for like a year. And I kid you not, every July, part of my process in our Sabbath month is I start going through, talking with staff, elders, praying through it, talking with some of you, and we start trying to map out our teaching series for the following year. So last July 2018, we put this series right here in September and October. I mean, that's really just a huge marker for us, talking about spiritual warfare, because I am convinced it is wrecking us. It's wrecking you. It's wrecking me. That we have all the tools necessary. Scripture's given us everything we need, but we don't quite know how to wear the armor well. And so this series takes us through Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 17, and we're going to look at each piece of the armor, and we're going to see how to wear it well, and how to actually start gaining some ground here. So today we start this series with the first three verses, verses 10 through 13, and the call to suit up, the call, the command, the challenge to put the armor on. And for some of you today, I know that means you got to be aware that there even is such a thing as spiritual warfare. And then you got to realize that there's actually such a thing as spiritual armor. And that the way you view yourself and the way I view myself might look really different from how God sees us. You might see yourself this morning as defeated. You might see yourself this morning as beaten down. You might see yourself this morning as a loser, as never going to get better, it's never going to amount to. You may see all that, but what the Father sees in you, dear disciple of Jesus, is He sees a warrior. He sees a champion because He has clothed you into being a champion. Hey, we're going to see ourselves very differently at the end of this, and it starts today. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 13. We're going to camp on these first three verses today. The Apostle Paul is writing this letter to the churches in Ephesus, and he himself is once again in prison for preaching the gospel. And when you read the later New Testament and you get into all the writings of the Apostle Paul, a lot of those things happened while he was in prison, and you kind of start wondering, was Paul ever not in prison? Yes, there were lots of times he wasn't in prison, but I think he writes these books like Ephesians, 1st, 2nd Timothy, Titus. I think he writes these things, Philippians. I think he's writing these prison letters because that's when he has time. See, otherwise he's planting churches, building the kingdom, encouraging people, training people. He's doing what he's doing. And then he gets in prison, and that's when the Holy Spirit now captures him because he's been captured, and now he writes these letters. But as he's under this house arrest, as he's writing Ephesians, he's watching his Roman guards go back and forth. And Roman soldiers were a common occurrence in the Roman Empire. Everybody would have seen these things. They would have known how these guys would have looked. And ladies, bear in mind, back then women didn't serve in the military, so it would have been just men. Okay, so when I say guys in that sense, I do mean men. They would have seen these men, and these men looked all about the same, depending on rank. Their helmet might have been different, but he would have seen this. His audience would have seen these soldiers. And he's using that imagery to tell us to suit up. He writes this, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark age, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand." So verse 10, the Apostle Paul is calling us to a much bigger cosmological view, if you will, of the world. He's writing to Roman citizens. Roman citizens had a lot in common with us. They were enlightened. No, they didn't use that term, okay? But they had this concept that there was a different idea of how good and evil were, and the Apostle Paul is reminding his readers, no, there's a real battle out there. And we have to suit up to resist these systematic and methodical war plans of Satan. I'm giving him a name. He just kind of described generalities. And when I say Satan, I'm kind of putting him in the category of he's the person that's in charge of the evil forces. But you can kind of generalize that and almost say the plans of Satan and the demons and his followers. I'm just giving a person. And the reason is it's easy for us as Christians to simply disembody evil and just say, well, evil is a force. No, the Bible describes evil as a person. It never talks about it as a force. It is centered on people, or it is centered on a being. In this case, the being is Satan. All right, so that's why I'm drawing it so specifically to one being, one entity. But the Apostle Paul is telling us that we've got to suit up against these systematic and methodical war plans because Satan's got them. He calls them the devil's schemes. Schemes, it means a logical, ordered process, systematic, methodical. There's a plan that Satan is running against us. You think it's any wonder that when you try something in faith, you hear a voice shouting at you, you're going to fail, give up, and stop? Who do you think that is? That's the war plan of Satan. No, it may not be Satan himself, maybe a demon, fine. But it's the same plan, and it keeps working. I think about it this way. Do you think that Satan or some being of hell, do you think that evil and the devil are not present at church events? Do you think that possibly one of Satan's greatest tools would be to get inside of a church and mess it up? Do you think maybe he might be interested in showing up to an adult Bible fellowship, life group, potluck, business meeting? I would. That's a pretty good plan. You see, if you can get the people who trust God to start having doubt, well, the world's easy pickings because they don't believe in God anyway. That's a pretty good plan. Satan's been running it for millennia, and why does he keep doing it? It keeps working. So we're told to suit up. And Christians have been wrestling with this and talking about this since the Apostle Paul wrote it. And the Old Testament certainly dealt with it, but the New Testament really put a fine lens on it and really focused it to help us see it clearer. But C.S. Lewis wrote about this in his Screwtape Letters. And he was remarking about this, and here's what he writes. He says, there are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight. So Satan has been running this perfect plan against us for a long time. And we're called to suit up. But not in our power, not in our strength. You see, we're told to be strong in the Lord, which means your spiritual power is not dependent on your ability to bench press 300 pounds. It is based on your ability to look at the mountain and say, jump, and it does. It's a different kind of strength. But here's the cool thing. It's not even your strength. It's not even your spiritual strength. It's not your armor. The scriptures aren't telling us put on the armor that you have because you created this armor when you became a disciple of Jesus. It's all His. It's His armor, and we put on His armor that He has gifted us. Now, also, it's not just that we suit up to resist the systematic and methodical war plans of Satan. It's also that we suit up with full awareness of who our real enemy is. It's easy for us to get distracted by the enemy and see the wrong target. There's a lot of people in my family that are in law enforcement. And I have a few people in the military and a few people here served in the military. And we love you guys. When we pray for you guys, we're thankful for your service. But one interesting thing with law enforcement military people, every now and again I've asked them this question to make sure I'm still right. I would say, hey, if you're in a hostage situation and you're trying to release hostages, how do you approach that? And they all say about the same thing. They kind of go, man, that's really, hostage situations are about the nastiest. They're tough because you don't know what that guy's going to do who's got the gun. You don't know if he's going to shoot those hostages or if he's going to release them or if he's going to make an example. I mean, we just saw something on the news again about another mass shooting. You don't know what these people are going to do. And so these family members I have or friends in law enforcement, they'll say, it's complicated and very tough what to do. But one thing that they never tell me, I'll ask, well, what do you do? How do you manage it? To talk about negotiation, you get on the phone, you get time, you plan ways to get in, to take out the shooter or to take out the person taking hostages. But one thing always is interesting to me. You know what they never tell me? Not one member of law enforcement or the military has ever told me, yeah, we just go in and shoot the hostages because then the enemy's an easy target. I mean, you take away his leverage at that point, so you just easily can take him. Not one has ever told me that. And yet, as Christians, that is exactly what we do. We are content to shoot the hostage. We look out at the world and all of its evil, and there's a ton of it. There's evil all over the place. And we're content to look down our crooked noses and shake our fingers saying, y'all are bad, and y'all are bad, and y'all are really bad, and y'all are really bad, and you are just evil. We're just content to look at them, judge them, criticize them the whole time, and we're content to shoot the hostage, and the real enemy simply goes, all right, got that, Christian, next. Because we keep falling for it. Church, we got to stop shooting the hostages. We got to stop realizing that the people of the world who don't know Jesus are not the enemy. They're not the enemy. They're the captives. They're the hostages. I'll even go so far as to say they're the puppets of the enemy. But they're not the enemy. They're not the ones coming at us, not really. Physically in our eyes, yes, it may be them. It may be them spewing curses at us, yes. It may be them making fun of us, yes, and it probably will be. But they're not the real enemy. As I will often tell people, you cannot blame the world for acting like the world. It doesn't know any better. That's why we're here, to show them something else. If we just shoot them all the time, we don't accomplish anything. Quit shooting the hostages. Keep your eyes on the enemy. The real enemy is the devil who's running around and enslaving people. That's the real enemy. So he says in that verse 12, he says, we don't struggle against flesh and blood. You see, Christians then were doing it too. It's easier because it's an easy target to look at them and go, well, you just need to learn how to act like Christians before I can really deal with you. You're going to have to look like me and talk like me before we can really talk. You see, now we're trying to teach them hypocrisy. Act like a Christian even though you're not a Christian yet. No, it doesn't work. Quit shooting the hostage. Know who the real enemy is. We suit up with full awareness of our real enemy. Now, lest we think this is all bad news, verse 13 reminds us of the really, really good news. Verse 13 is the reminder that we suit up from victory with Jesus. Look at verse 13. Therefore, whenever you see a therefore, just ask yourself, what's it there for? It's a little summary on these verses. Okay? So Paul is saying, I said all that to say this. Put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. Now he says when the day of evil comes. He's not talking about, the end of time. He's not talking about some unspecified. He's talking about when spiritual warfare lands at your doorstep and the day of evil has found you. And there you are facing it. You didn't sign up for it necessarily, although you kind of did. As a Christian, we have a target on our chest and Satan that sees it. Okay, we didn't necessarily sign up for that part, but there we are. We're facing it, and now we're told to stand. Some of us are so convinced we're defeated because we've been listening to Satan's war plan for so long. So when I first wrote this out, I can't tell you how many spell checkers and how many editors said, is that the right preposition? From? See, every spell checker from Word to Grammarly to the software we use to design our bulletins and stuff says that word should be for. So I had to argue with all this technology and say, no. We don't fight for victory. The cross said it's already been won. I fight from victory. When Jesus died on that cross, paying the price for my sin and your sin, and he said, it is finished, he meant it. It is paid. It is done. We have victory. And so Satan thought, I did it. I killed the Son of God, and I got his own creation to do it. Satan thinks I got God's own religious people to twist up the truth and to twist it around, and they got those Romans to kill Jesus, and I'm sure Satan's pretty happy with himself on Friday. He's going, yeah, I killed the Son of God. I finally got God back. I hit him in the heart this time. Saturday comes around, and Satan's still pretty stoked. I mean, he's dead. He's stone cold dead. And so Satan is going, I really won. I won. And I don't know this really happened this way, but I can almost imagine Satan laughing at the Father. But then came Sunday morning. The stone rolled away. Jesus walks out using Satan's head as a step stool and says, "Good morning, Father." The debt has been paid. The battle has been won. You are not fighting for victory. It has been won. You think that struggle you have today will remain your struggle forever. No. You already have the victory. Either Jesus said we will overcome or he was a liar. We will. We have the victory. You think that struggle you have with depression, worry, negativity, cynical thought, you think that's always going to be who you are? No. That's the devil telling you that. You don't fight for victory. You suit up from victory. You think a struggle you have with a bad marriage, porn addiction, bad relationship, you think that's always how it's going to be? That is the devil screaming at you, telling you that. The truth is, you already have the victory. Act like it. Suit up from victory. I told you that was the good news. I told you that verse 13 is the best part. When Jesus came out, he kicked the devil in the teeth. There's no more bite to him anymore. But we keep giving him way too much credit. We listen to his shouts way over there, and we fail to hear the friend that sticks closer than a brother saying, "I already got this. Just stand your ground. I already got it." That's the voice we got to learn to listen to. Now, I'm not a big country music fan. If you are, glory to God, that's great. I'm not. But there's one song, it's a country song, that just so captures how I feel about this verse 13. It's by a country group called Rascal Flatts, and the chorus of the song says, "When push comes to shove, you taste what you're made of. You might bend till you break, because it's all you can take. On your knees you look up, decide you've had enough. You get mad, you get strong, wipe your hands, shake it off, then you stand." That's what we have with Jesus. From victory, we stand because we've already won. The wind against your face is temporary. You've already won. So fellow soldiers in the army of the Lord Jesus Christ, out there living out the truth to reach one more person for Jesus, that's the plan here. All you people doing that, here's the call of these 3 verses. Get ready for battle. Put on the armor given to us by the power of Christ. It is battle. And it's tough out there, and it's hard, and it's going to hurt. And you're going to get hurt. And you're sometimes going to hurt because we're human. But it is battle. And you don't go into war without your armor. And we put on that armor because we need it. The Apostle Paul writes in Philippians chapter 3, verses 12 through 14. He's at the end of his life. He thinks he's about to die, and he writes this: "Not that I've already obtained all of this or have arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I don't consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." Get ready for battle. Put on all the armor given to us by the power of Christ. So my brothers and sisters, my fellow soldiers in the army, how's your armor? How's that armor doing? Remember, it's not yours. We're caretakers of it, but it's not really ours. Suit up to resist the systematic and methodical war plans of Satan. That's why we need the armor. doesn't fight fairly. I wish he played by the rules, but he's been twisting them since the beginning. Trust me, the devil knows the Bible better than we do. It's why he can twist it so easily. He cheats. Suit up with the full awareness of our real enemy. It's not the people who keep attacking us. They're the people we're going to show Jesus to. But know who the real enemy is, and then suit up from the victory Jesus has already won. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, it's not always the big, huge spiritual attacks that weigh me down. Don't get me wrong. I'm not diminishing anyone's pain, mine included. But when we face the big attack, we kind of expect it to arrest our attention. We kind of expect the world to stop while we deal with this. And then, everyone, the troops kind of rally around us. You know what I mean? We kind of get the spiritual family together. Maybe it's your life group. Maybe it's your literal biological family. But you gather people around you because it's so big that it just kind of stops the world. But if you're like me, it's usually not that gets you down as much as what I call the death by 1,000 cuts. Just that constant chinking at the armor. Tink. Tink. Every step. Tink. Tink. It feels like with every step you make, you're just getting attacked by some little thing that in and of itself, it's tiny. It's not a big deal by itself, but all together, it just feels like you're constantly fighting. And maybe the image of yourself, maybe a warrior, maybe you got your weaponry, but you just feel like you're just dragging it with you. And you're just kind of barely pushing along, and it's not the big, huge attack that everybody comes around you for. It's just the weariness of life. See, that's spiritual warfare too. That's part of it too. And so maybe the words from a young African pastor who was eventually martyred for his faith some decades ago. After he was martyred, they were looking through his notes, the Christians there in that nation, and they found his final sermon that he never got to preach. But ever since then, we told part of it. And these were his words, maybe days before he was martyred for his faith. And it became a rallying cry for other Christians. He wrote this: I am a part of the fellowship of the unashamed. I have the Holy Spirit's power. The die has been cast. I've stepped across the line. The decision has been made. I am a disciple of His. I will not look back, let up, back up, slow down, or be still until I am done. I am finished with low living, sight walking, smooth knees, colorless dreams, tame visions, worldly chatter, cheap giving, and dwarf goals. I do not have to have preeminence, prosperity, position, prominence, applause, or popularity. I do not have to be right or first, tops, recognized, praised, rewarded, or regarded. I now live by faith. I walk in His presence. I lean on His patience. I'm uplifted by prayer. I labor with power. My faith is set. My goal is heaven. My road is narrow. My way is rough. My companions are few. My guide is reliable. My vision is clear. I cannot be bought, compromised, detoured, turned back, diluted, or delayed. I will no longer flinch in the face of persecution. I will no longer hesitate in the presence of my enemies. I will no longer pander in the pool of popularity or meander in the maze of mediocrity. I will not give up or let up or shut up until I have stayed up, stored up, paid up, prayed up, and preached up for the cause of Christ. I must go until He comes, give until I drop, preach until all know, and labor until He stops me. And when He comes for His own, He will have no problem recognizing me. I am completely His. Suit up. You are completely His. Father, the words of this brother still affect me today, and I've read it 100 times. That in heaven He glorifies You, and He praises You, And on this earth, his final breath was in praise to you, declaring that he was completely yours. His life is an inspiration. God, we want that said of us, that should you return before we die, you would have no trouble recognizing us because we are completely sold out. We are completely suited up with what you have given us. Father, I pray for those who have been beaten down by the battle, dragging armor, pieces of it missing. And they're tired. God, I pray that they would feel you just putting the armor back on, sewing together those pieces of leather that have been broken, riding the helmet on their head, sharpening the sword and polishing the shield. And in this time of response, God, speak gently to us. May we hear the whisper of our Father. Oh, teach us to hear the whisper of you above the shouts of our enemy. We yield this time of response to you, and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name.